Hey, One Biology 190 online people want to give you just a little quick video on cells, something to do with cells, okay? Cells are really awesome because here's a bone, you know that's a bone, and that's in you, it's like a hip bone, femur, not hip bone, but thigh bone. And there's a plant, and look at the plant, look at this. So these items, as well as you, moi, we started off as a single cell, but then we become this menagerie of cells. With us, it's about 100 trillion cells. In plants, you can have monster trees. So what's interesting is how you have one cell becomes multiple cells. Let's look at something. There's this thing that I always push called the hierarchy of life. And you start off with an organism. I'll say that's you. Okay, we put a little smile on the face because I know you're smiling. And you are an organism made up of organ systems. I'll just use OS, organ systems. They break down to organs. Organs break down to tissues. Tissues break down to cells, and cells break down to molecules. All right, and molecules break down to atoms. And when you want to discuss atoms, which is another area, then you have protons, electrons, and neutrons, okay? So the magic of life seems to kick in when you get an aggregate of cells, you see? So everything on the planet is either a single cell or a multi-cell, like an elephant or a cockroach or something like that, you see? So what's interesting is that it has cells. Everything has cells. So when I would ask you to draw a cell, I'm going to ask you now, take 2 seconds and draw a cell. 1001, 1002. Okay, you probably did something like this. And here's what I found. Whenever I ask audiences to draw a cell, the most trifling, cavalier persons, here's what they do. They make a circle, but they always make sure it's connected. They don't leave it open, just hanging, And that may look like that's not important, but that's important because what happens is here are you, but you're really the sum total of chemical reactions. And those reactions have to take place in a special container. As it turns out for life, the container is a cell, you see? So here's what cells must do. We all want to have smiles on our faces, smiles on our cells, okay? So what cells have to do 24/7, and you know what I mean by that, night and day, they have to bring in good stuff, and they have to take out bad stuff, which will be metabolic waste and maybe toxins, other things that can happen, okay? So this is what cells are set up to do. So when you draw this line here, ignore the smiley face, what you're drawing is a very essential part of the cell called the cell membrane. Because the cell membrane sets a boundary and it also controls what goes on, okay? Now, here's what you know. You go through the day, it's hot, it's cold, it's this, it's that. You have to make adjustments. Well, you are able to make adjustments because your cells can make adjustments. And that's a real important phenomenon that I'll talk about later. But it's a phenomenon whereby a cell can monitor what's going on and make an appropriate change. You see? And that's so important because the script flips all the time. So when you look at a cell, as you know, I draw a cell again. And if you ask a person to draw a cell and put it in a few parts, usually they'll do this and they'll do that. What is this little part right here? That's right, it's the nucleus, you see. And then you can put in some other things. You do a squiggly, and that's called endoplasmic reticulum. And then you can put in something that looks kind of like this, Golgi. And then my favorite is this bad boy like that, called mitochondria. So I don't have to go into all these. But then look at another one. There's a little bad boy called a lysosome that has enzymes in it that can digest the cell itself. So the question is, why would the cell ever want to do that? Well, as it turns out, cells dying at an appropriate time is important. See my hand? I don't look like Donald Duck with a web because I did have tissue here in development, but it died, okay? Also, you wouldn't think brain cells have to die to sharpen how the brain operates too, so all your neurons. So you get smarter not by getting more neurons, but getting rid of neurons and shaping how they are connected, okay? So these are the different parts of the cell. Now, getting back to this, in order for a cell to stay happy, it's got to get in good stuff and bad stuff in a timely manner. Sometimes it requires energy to be used. And you know from earlier chapters in studying, what is the molecule that is pretty phenomenal, it's ubiquitous, it's found everywhere on the planet where everything is living. 3-letter abbreviation, ATP, adenosine triphosphate, okay? And that has to be used. So whenever you're using ATP, move things back and forth That's called active transport. Active transport. In some cases, you have a lot of something out here, outside the cell, and because it's more of it here than in here, it just naturally comes in, and that's called passive transport. So let me write that down so I feel like I'm teaching, okay? So I said active transport, and I'll just draw a line now with passive. Now, when grandma's cooking cookies, you can close your eyes and know if she's in this room or that room because the smell will leave. So things go from where there's a lot of it, high concentration, to where there's low. And what happens is if grandma's cookies are there, it's higher there and less here, so we can follow that gradient of increase. So that's how things move in passive transport, okay? So there's passive and active. Another is I said cells must check out and respond. So cells have some real cool things on their surface called receptors. And receptors have the ability to bind to, like I made a little circle here, I'll make a triangle. It binds to the receptor. When it does, it causes changes in the cell. One type of molecule that causes changes that you may know, but you didn't think about it, are hormones, okay? So as I look out there, I see ladies, I see guys, male, female, big people, and what happens is you are male, female, big muscles, or however, high voice, low voice, primarily due to the hormones that you have. You know, those that are more feminine and those that are more masculine, the males and females have both, but the balance is different, and that's what makes it, you know, as it is. So cells are really important, getting things in and out. The membrane is really important. So be sure to study the structure of the membrane. This has what's called a lipid bilayer. So if I have this right here, I'm going to take this piece and rotate it and make it a little bit bigger. And don't worry about the details in the video, but you have the book. But you have a layer here and a layer here. So if this is the outside of the cell, and this is inside. So what happens is then you have things stuck in the membrane, and again you have to go back to your book and read it. You have proteins. So this is a protein. Now put a P. So this is the outside of the cell. This is inside. So some proteins are stuck in the outer layer, some on the inner layer, and some go across the whole membrane. And guess what they do? They can serve as passageways called pores and channels to let things get in. Channels are so important. That's what keeps you going. That's why you can laugh at a joke and smell a rose and say, I love you. It's because of pores and channels that cause it, okay? Two kinds of cells that we'll talk about later that are important for this especially are your nerve cells and your muscle cells. You know nerves are important because that's your inky-dinky do, how you think and remember things, right? And it has to do with the movement of material in and out. Going back to the earlier part, we have sodium and potassium. And when you see this little plus sign, do you remember what that's called? This is potassium, this is sodium. When you see a plus or negative, yeah, it's called an ion. And if it has a plus sign, it's a cation. And if it has a negative, like the chloride, it's an anion. So anyway, if you don't follow this right now, go back and review it because we covered that earlier in class. So I just wanted to give you this about cells. Also, let me show you this. Cells can be like this, long and slinky. They can be like this. They can be like little donuts. They can be like this. I drew a cube. They can be irregular, so they have different shapes. And that's something called form follows function. Form follows function. So if a cell in an area doesn't look the way it should look, fancy word, $5 word, morphology, then it doesn't function right. One that we know of is, say, sickle cell. Blood cells go through your blood vessels and it gets to the tiniest blood vessels called capillaries. And those bad boys have to line up like one at a time, like at the airport going through TSA. And what happens is that they get bundled and then it's really bad. And you get with sickle cells and crisis. The red cells that are typically round change their shape. You see what I'm saying? So this is the little part I'll give you. I'll come back on another video and go over how cells reproduce. Again, we started as one cell, we were multicellular, and so did these. But on another video I'll do it. So right now this is like an intro to cells. Everything that we know now that's alive on the planet is either one cell, like an amoeba, to you, or it's multicellular, like, wow,